Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Isabel,
And I'm Ariel.
and this is my library.
It's my library.
And in today's video, we will be reviewing and discussing The Eyes of the Dragon by Stephen King. As promised, the time has come. It is time for my husband and I to tell you all about The Eyes of the Dragon, our very first buddy read together. So I guess the first thing we can start by doing is talking to you a little bit about this book. So we'll kind of do the summary together. I'll start off by saying that in this book, we are following a king named Roland.
King Roland.
And he has two sons, Thomas and Peter.
And Peter.
Thomas and Peter. Peter is the one who is the heir to the throne. And basically, there's an evil guy.
That's a good way to describe it.
Named Flag.
An evil guy, yeah.
Named Flag, and he's a magician. And he is pretty much the councilman to Roland.
He's a wizard.
He's a wizard. He's not a magician, he's a wizard. As a reminder, for those of you who may not know, who don't follow my channel, I don't read a lot of fantasy. And so my husband is always correcting me when it comes to fantasy terms and verbiage and all of that. So, so basically we're following this king who does die pretty early on in the book. And his son, Peter, is said to be the heir
apparent.
Huh?
He's the heir apparent.
Yeah, he's the heir apparent. And Flag, the wizard, is not too happy with that, which we will talk about those things in a little bit. And he does whatever he can to make sure that Peter is put away, locked away, and not able to be the new king of Delain. So that's just a brief summary of what this book is all about. So what I've decided to do is kind of set up a couple questions so that we can have some discussions. We'll obviously share with you our reviews and what we thought of the book overall, but this is our first buddy read together. Normally, we don't really read the same kind of books, but
we've read the same books before, but not at the same time.
Yeah, and so this is normally more his kind of book, although it is a Stephen King and we are both Stephen King fans. But since this is kind of like a fantasy, and I'll obviously ask him to share a little bit more about how much of a fantasy book this is, since I don't really have much to compare it to. But we decided to make this our very first buddy read pick and kind of talk about it and share ideas and stuff like that. So now that we've given you the premise of this book, I'd like to go ahead and kind of ask you, how does this book compare to other Stephen King books that you've read? And you can talk about the other books you've read, or just tell me how much you liked this one more than those, or how the genre varies and stuff like that.
I mean, I read it because I have been reading the Dark Tower series, and I heard that this was one of the books that kind of spun into the Dark Tower series. So that's why I chose it. And obviously, to do a buddy read and all that fun stuff that goes with that. But mostly, I liked it. But I was a little bit disappointed.
Okay, so first I'll add that I have not read the Dark Tower series. It is something I do want to get into. What appeals to me most about that is the element of like portal stuff, right?
Portal
like
fantasy.
Portal fantasy. I really like that. As you guys know, that's something that I enjoy. But he's pretty far into the series. What book are you in?
Either 7 out of 8 or 8 out of 9. I'm not really sure. I have one before the last one.
Okay, so yeah, so he's kind of there, and I'll obviously ask you a little bit now, like how much did you find out about that series through this book? Because we do know it does share a universe. I think it shares a universe with it. But yeah, so that's kind of like why we stumbled upon picking this as one of the books. Also, another reason we decided to pick this is because I had actually read this many years ago. My mom is a big Stephen King fan, and as a child she had read this and she recommended that I read it. I believe I was like in middle school when I read it. But now that I did another reread, I didn't really remember a lot. Like I knew there was some sort of royalty trapped in like a tower, and that's really all I remembered from, you know, reading this when I was like 12 or 13. And he had never read it, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, how have you not read it? You love fantasy. I think you would love it. So yeah. As far as like the ones, oh, so you've compared it to the Dark Tower series. What about any others that you've read that?
I mean, the one that I read recently is Fairy Tale, and it's really nothing like Fairy Tale. You know, Fairy Tale is a portal fantasy, it's a drama, it's a coming of age story. This is really none of that. You know, this is a
Okay.
I I'm remiss to say it's even a fantasy novel. It's a novel
Really?
that takes place in a fantasy setting,
Okay.
but it's not a fantasy novel. You know, throughout the whole book, and I'm spoiler alert, I guess. Throughout the whole book, there's one dragon, right? And the dragon's not even a character; it's just an enemy. It's just a creature, right?
Okay.
So, what I look for in fantasy is sword and sorcery, right? You know, knights and elves and dwarves and all that kind of stuff. You know, Lord of the Rings type stuff. And this has no Tolkien-esque elements at all, right? It's basically medieval England with a dragon in it, with one dragon in it, and the dragon is dead. So he's not even like a
He's alive at the beginning though, although he dies pretty
you know
soon on in the book.
yeah. So it's not really a fantasy novel, and it's definitely not a sword and sorcery fantasy novel, right? There's no Lord of the Rings in this at all,
Okay.
right? Which is why I'm remiss to say I didn't like it, because I did like it. It's good, right? It's good. It's like a family drama. It's more like the Man in the Iron Mask, right?
Okay.
It's a family drama. It's a thriller, maybe,
I
right?
didn't think it was too
You
thrillery,
know,
but
I mean, I don't read
yeah.
too many thrillers, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's a dramatic book to a certain
Yeah.
point. It's just like a family story, you know.
Mhm. Okay. So the Stephen King books that I have read are nothing like this one.
Like it's
I've
definitely not Misery, right?
Right.
It's
Okay. So
definitely
yeah.
not
So it's
Misery.
very different to Misery. It's very different to a lot of collections of short stories. It's even very different to the Wendy's Button Box series, which is a series I really, really have been enjoying. I haven't read all three yet, but I really enjoyed that one. And it's just been pretty. I found this to be very different from his usual stuff. To me, it did kind of feel like a fairy tale. I know you kind of thought it didn't, but it has an overarching narrator. Like there's this narrating voice that's telling us the story of
Yeah,
Roland and his sons, and that alone I felt was very fairy tale-ish, you know.
that was my favorite character. The
Oh,
narrator was my favorite
no
character
way.
by far. Yeah,
Well,
yeah, by far.
I did like, I was, well, that's one of my questions actually, that I was gonna ask you in a little bit, like what your favorite character was. But this narrating voice, we never really find out who he is, right? Or, you know, he's just someone that's passing on the story.
That's part of the book that's maybe the most fantasy-ish, right?
Right.
Is that as the story goes on and the chapters go on, and he says things like, "Well, that's a story for another day,"
Yeah.
or "This happened, but we're not going to get into that right now,"
Yeah.
or which I surely have told you about before. And those are the parts that I kind of fed on because I'm reading this as kind of a Dark Tower, text, like something that's
Yeah.
supposed
Yeah.
to bleed into it. So every time he said, I'll tell you something about that later, I was like, okay, this is the nugget that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And I feel like it never really came.
Yeah.
Um, but to a certain point, to be fair, like this book, I'm not sure when it was written, but it's written in the 70s or 80s, right?
Yeah.
And The Dark Tower, like, I'm sure this book was not written with the intention
It's
of, you know, melding into the Dark Tower series.
it's
So
1987.
1987, I'm not sure when the Dark Tower started, but I'm not sure if they were written as an idea. It's got very like Star Wars, the prequel, right? That you could tell
Yeah.
they're just
Yeah.
kind of mashing it together, trying to see what fits.
Yeah.
Like some of the names are the same, Roland and things like that.
And Flag too, right?
And Flag too, yeah, Flag's like an
And Flag
overarching,
is like in other stuff too.
right? And because the Dark Tower is all about, you know, the different worlds, right? There are other worlds than these, is the saying in the book, and parallel universes, or the multiverse too, the multiverse.
He knows I hate that word.
Um, so I kind of expect this to be one of those multiverses, but the this character of Roland is so far removed from Roland, Roland Deschain of the Dark Tower,
Mm-hmm.
that they share nothing in common. Like
Okay.
nothing physical, nothing spiritual, nothing emotional, nothing, they don't share anything in common. So the only thing that's the same is the names. So even if you look at it as like a Dark Tower, adjacent story, it doesn't really hold up. And that's kind of my bias. That's what I was looking for it to
Mm-hmm.
be, and it really wasn't. Like as a standalone novel, I enjoyed it. Right, I did.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it a little bit. not enough sword and sorcery for me.
Sure.
But it was good.
So since he shared his his favorite character, I'll share mine. I believe mine was Sasha. That was her name, right?
The mom.
Sasha, the mom, was my
Yeah, that
favorite
was a good character.
character. She's not in the book for a long time, and again, we're gonna do mostly spoiler free. Like the things that we will share are just little details, so we won't ruin anything major for you. But I thought Sasha was a wonderful character. I found her to be inspiring. I loved her relationship with her son Peter. I really liked the impact that she had in his life throughout.
Hmm.
I feel like the lessons that he learned from her are things that actually save him in the long
Correct.
run without spoiling,
Yeah.
anything for you. But if you've read it, you know what we're talking about. But I just felt like although she wasn't a presence in his life for a very long time, the time that she was in his life was meaningful. And I just loved everything that she stood for. And I love that she was such a threat to Flag,
Yeah, she's like
right?
the North Star in the book, right? Like
Yes.
everything, she leads the whole direction of the book,
Yeah.
and she's so aggressive to Flag to a certain point, right?
Yeah.
She's so the antithesis of Flag. It was
Correct.
really good.
So I enjoyed her character a lot. So that was one of the questions that I had. And then I had also wanted to ask you about like if it added anything to your Dark Tower series knowledge, and not really, right? It didn't
Not
expand
really,
much.
not really. I worry a little bit that because I read the Dark Tower without having really read a lot of those other Stephen King books,
Yeah.
that maybe whatever references were in this were 4 books ago in the Dark Tower, and I missed them then. And if I didn't catch it then, the odds of me
Yeah.
remembering that this might be something that attaches to this are slim, right? So,
Well, if you're a Stephen King universe connoisseur, let us know in the comments below. Like, did we miss, well, did he miss, because I haven't read Dark Tower, but did he miss anything, any
any
connections
references or
or
anything.
references on there?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
if anybody knows like anything else that is kind of Dark Tower adjacent, like let me know. I mean, I'm really I'm into it, right? So I'm just curious about the whole how everything fits together.
Yeah. Great. So let's talk about ratings before we continue, because I don't really know if we liked it or not. So you can go first. He usually doesn't rate books, but I told
I
him,
do rate
can
books.
you have like an idea of what kind of rating you would give it if you were a person who rated books?
Um, so I'm gonna give this book 2 ratings. As a Dark Tower adjacent book, I'm gonna give it 2 stars.
Okay.
Right? There's nothing in the book like if you read it from the perspective I was reading it from, right? Which is not it's not fair to the author, it's not fair to anybody else, right? It was just something that I created in my own mind that I want to read this book because it's supposed to be like the Dark Tower.
Yeah.
And when it wasn't, I was disappointed, right? So as a Dark Tower adjacent book, I'm gonna give it 2 stars. It's not very good for that. As a book on its own, I'll give it like I guess like 3.5 stars.
3.5.
It was good.
Okay.
I liked it. You know, again, that might be another uh, shortcoming on my fault, right? I expected it to be a fantasy novel, a Tolkien-esque fantasy novel,
Sure.
right? Where we have elves and dwarves going into caves and fighting dragons, right? That's what I
Yeah.
expected, and it was not that at all, right? It was a family drama.
Yeah.
It was good. It was, it was very like Man in the Iron Mask-ish, which was good. It was just not what I was expecting. So maybe I'll give it another read in the future when I kind of know what I'm getting into and I've forgotten all the details,
Yeah.
and maybe my rating will change, but I don't think it will.
So I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was really, really good. Again, when I do this, I always tell you why wasn't it like a 5 star? Like if it's a book I really liked and I gave 4 stars and all of that, and I don't have a definitive answer, but I think I just wanted more. Like what the more exactly is, I can't put my
Yeah.
finger on it. You too?
I think the more is the action that I was waiting
More
for.
action?
The more is the action I was waiting for. It's a political drama, is really what it is. It turns out to be a
Yeah.
political drama, right?
There were just moments where I felt like certain things were anticlimactic, or there were lulls in the narrative. I had a lot of questions as to why is this not happening, or couldn't this have been a solution. So like, yeah, go ahead.
The one thing I did like, and I'm not like a super literary person, right? But the one thing I did like is this book doesn't have a lot of foreshadowing, right?
Right.
Which sometimes I get. I mean, most of the time I think I get, but sometimes I don't. But what I liked about it and I thought was interesting was that there is no foreshadowing because there's a narrator. The narrator tells you,
Yeah.
he had this plan, but that didn't work out.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you about that later, right?
I
Where he
love
says,
that.
and this person was planning on doing this, but they never went. Right.
Yeah.
So I thought that was so cool, kind of the way it's framed, right?
I love that
Where
too.
he's telling you It's like, like George Lucas saying that, the Millennium Falcon can run the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs. At the time, nobody knows what 12 parsecs is. Like what, and nobody knows what the Kessel Run is, right? So it's tell but don't show.
Hmm.
And I kind of like the idea that they're like, oh, this knight or this whatever character went off to the west and had great adventures,
Sure.
but we'll talk about that some other time. So I thought it was very cool. I really enjoyed that part. When those
That's
little parts
cool.
came up, I was like, ooh,
Yeah, I enjoyed that too, and I never even thought to think of the narrator as a character.
mm-hmm.
I maybe would have switched my choice of Sasha being my favorite character to
Yeah.
him because I did like that. I think he made the book
I
for me.
I totally saw him as like sitting in a tavern by a fireplace, like telling this story.
Yeah.
I definitely saw him as like a traveling bard or like a
Yeah, yeah.
traveling storytelling minstrel or something that was just
He's
out
adding the
there telling the
fantasy parts
story.
that were not on
Exactly.
there. He's
Yeah,
adding.
yeah, yeah. Somebody give Stephen King my email. So but that's the image I had created, right? And the more that I created that image, the more I enjoyed it when he kind of went
Yeah.
off script and was telling things that were not in the book.
Yeah, I enjoyed that too. So yeah, so I guess my 5-star rating didn't come because I wanted more, maybe more action, like he said in certain parts, or maybe I don't know what it was, but it's just it was a 4-star. It's a very very solid book. The narrative is beautiful. His writing is still very nice. So, yeah, and I enjoyed that, but it wasn't quite the 5-star for me. It wasn't quite the 5-star.
Can I give 0.25 stars?
You can give, yeah, sure. It's your rating.
So maybe it's 3.25.
3.25, even lower.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, ask me again in 15 minutes.
I will. So we kind of talked about our favorite characters. So I think I already know what he's going to say for this one, but I was going to ask you if you could change anything, what would it be? Like if you could change something to make the book better, or
I think at the risk of sounding like super meta, I think that what I would change is me, right? Like
okay,
I would change my preconceived notions of going into the book because I
okay,
think that that's the only thing that made me not really like it. And this kind of book, this kind of like political drama, is not really my bag, right? So would I have read it on a recommendation if somebody had told me, "Hey, this is like a medieval, family drama book.
mm-hmm.
Would can you read it? I liked it. I think you might like it too." Then I would read it, right? And maybe I would like it more than I do. But when I went in thinking it was going to be, Dark Tower adjacent, thinking it was going to be a sword and sorcery fantasy adventure, right? When it turned out to be none of those things, that's not the book's fault. That's my fault,
Yeah,
right? So I think if I could change one thing, it would be the time and place with under which I read it, and the
yeah,
pretenses under which I read it would probably be the one thing I would change. The book itself, like I said, if you like that kind of book, I enjoyed it in spite of it not being my kind of book, right? So
mm-hmm.
that says something about it, right? I enjoyed it a lot. And there were times when I was like, man, like I wonder what's gonna happen next, right? I was invested, so it
Sure,
was good. Would I read it again? Three
yeah.
point two five.
So I'm not sure. I made this question and I don't know if I had an answer for it. So I'm not really sure what I would change. I think I want to tie that to like least favorite character. So I think I'm gonna tie what I would change to least favorite character because I what I really didn't like was the character Thomas.
Yeah,
I don't know how you felt about that. I guess you'll tell us now, but I kind of felt like I didn't like his character at all. Like I know what they were going for with the character of Thomas, and you know how they always say like don't stand too close to the hero because then you
yeah.
look like garbage, right? But um I didn't like him at all. I didn't find him to be like well fleshed out in the sense that a lot of the things he did like contradicted themselves, like especially toward the ending. Obviously we're not spoiling anything,
Yeah.
but he was just so whiny and so weak and so and then he talked about how similar he was to his father Roland, but I didn't see that. I still thought the father was a king, an impressive king who had who was admired by his people, right? And I know that Thomas was under the influence of Flag, right? So maybe that had something to do with it. But I guess my answer, well, I let you now talk about, your least favorite character or what you feel about Thomas. The thing I would change would be Thomas. Like, I think like that could have been written differently, or I wish something else would have been like the deal with Thomas.
I mean, I think that I feel like I'm going back to the same points over and over again, right? But I feel like my least favorite character was probably Flag.
Okay.
Um, because I understand what you're saying about Thomas, right? but I feel like Thomas is a little bit, for lack of a better term, I think he's like irrelevant, right?
Hmm.
He's just a puppet, right? So
Yeah, he is.
does he have to be super fleshed out? Not really, to get the story moving along. The story's about Flag and Peter, right? The story's not really about Thomas, right? Which is why certain things that happen in the second half of the book, I was like, where'd this come from?
Yeah,
You know, I was like, huh, okay, that's a choice.
I agree.
So, of course you do. So I was like, that's a choice, right? But I think my least favorite character was Flag, probably. Because as a villain and as a wizard or as a mage or as a magic user, whatever you want to call it, I'm just messing with you. He's more of an alchemist than he is a wizard,
Yeah.
right? So he's not super menacing, right? And again, that might be because of my love for high fantasy, right? So at some point, I'm expecting him to like launch fireballs or like
Correct.
do Gandalfish type things, and he
Hmm.
doesn't do those Gandalfish type things, right? Maybe Gandalf's probably a bad example because Gandalf during those novels doesn't do that many huge displays of magic. He does a few, but Flag does zero, right? So he does
Yeah.
zero displays of like powerful magic, right? The only thing he does is live for a very long time.
Yeah.
So you're like, man, he's almost like a vampire to a certain point where he just lives for a long time, so people
Yeah.
are scared of him, I guess. And then again, in the end, when kind of the final showdown happens, I was not really happy with the way that that went
Me
down, and
either.
I think a lot of it is because Flag, he's just not menacing, right?
Yeah.
He's evil, he's a bad guy, but he's just not menacing, right? And I wanted this villain to be menacing, right? I wanted him to be Sauron.
Yeah. I kind of, it's funny because when we got to when I was reading a certain part toward the ending, I'm like, I yelled at him like, why if this guy is such a powerful magician or whatever word I used, right? That was probably wrong. But I'm like, why if he's so powerful is he climbing, 300 flights of stairs? Like, so I remember asking him that, like yelling it
Yeah,
across the thing, and he's like, well, we've never really seen the extent of his magic, like his powers.
right.
He uses potions and all these things.
Yeah, and obviously he's the advisor to the king, right? So he has this position of power, right? And he can greatly influence economy and
Right.
trade and all kinds of things. So he has this power from his political station, but he's very clearly, shown to us early in the novel that he is a wizard, right? So where is it?
Yeah,
Where is he? Where's the wizard?
I agree. And I thought he was like he could just do more magic, like he was more powerful if everyone was so afraid of him, or all of the things he was able to accomplish were through, like you said, alchemy, like a potion for this or a potion for that. But
Yeah, he's almost like a prankster and like a tremendous jerk. Like this guy, like this guy's evil power is being like
mm,
just a tremendous a hole. And although I mean that was again for a political intrigue book like that, it
yeah,
was probably pretty cool. But I was expecting him to like pull a rabbit out of a hat and shoot a
yeah,
fireball.
I agree. Okay, so I'm continuing with my questions. So do you have any scenes that stick out in your head as being memorable, like any very vivid scenes that stick out to you?
I guess the race to the end, right?
Okay.
And it's not a literal race. I just say that like the last few chapters,
Yeah.
just stick out in my mind
I
because
love the formatting of those chapters.
yeah,
Because obviously, well, spoiling stuff, the chapters get very short.
yeah.
And it's like it's really really cool. Like
Yeah,
it's
it's
cool.
very much like an action cutaway scene, where
Yeah, it's
you're just
fun.
cutting back and forth. So kind of again the race to the end. There's no race, but the race to the end, stuck out in my mind. I remember the feeling of, which is not a particular scene. I guess it's a series of scenes, which is Peter's plan. Like as
Uh-huh.
his plan takes shape, right?
Yes.
And how he's doing these things. I remember thinking like, where is he going with this, right?
Hmm.
So that was very cool. Aside from that, I don't think I have any other scene that jumps out to me
Yeah.
really.
I think I have to agree. Yeah, like his plan, like him working on his plan, I think was sticks to my. I can visualize him
Yeah,
and picture him doing that. The scenes of Thomas spying too.
yeah.
So those scenes are kind of
Those scenes
vivid.
are very cool. Those scenes
I
are very
thought that
cool.
was very cool, and that's really on, but we're not gonna talk about it just to not spoil stuff. But I thought that was cool.
And I think that's probably what sticks out of my mind the most. Which is what I had said earlier about the narrator when he tells you there's certain points that this is not going to go the way that the character envisioned it,
Hmm.
or we're not going to talk about that story now. There's a part where he says, this is happening, but it's not going to work,
Yeah.
right? And I don't want to say too much about it, but when you say to yourself, you're like, what? Like, what do you
Yeah.
mean? Right? And
It builds suspense
correct.
and
It's like
it's
like
cool.
an old A-Team episode where if somebody tells you, and
Yeah.
they're gonna come out and they're gonna
Yeah.
go to jail, you're like, wait, what? Like they're building this whole contraption and
Yeah.
it's not gonna work
I
out.
believe he finished the book before I did. By the way, just he read solely audiobook,
Yeah,
right?
only audio.
And I was reading physically, like a hybrid. I was reading physically and I was reading at other times audiobook. But then he had like a long business trip, and so he was able
Yeah,
to
finished in 2 days.
he finished it in like 2 days. At first, I was like, let me know when you're getting halfway, because he always says I read really fast. So he's like, let me know when you're getting. So I kept telling him, let me know when you're getting halfway so I can,
Okay, but you read like 12 books in a week. So it's not that
I
I
don't
say
read.
it's
They
not that
know I
I
don't
say
read that
that you
much.
read really fast. It's a
I do
fact.
not.
She
I do not.
reads really fast. Like
No.
12 books in a week.
It's not 12 books in a week.
I don't
I'm
read 12
barely.
books in a year.
No, he doesn't. He reads more.
Okay.
But the point is, that I was kind of telling him, and then he's like, "Oh, by the way, I finished," and I'm like, "What the heck?" So he did finish before me, but I clearly remember when I was still reading. One of the things I asked was like, "Do we ever find out who the narrator is?" Because that's something that I
Yeah.
wanted to know more about him, because I really liked him, and so he was, yes, of course, building that suspense and all of that, but I just enjoyed him, and I wanted to know, how did he know, like, this story.
Yeah, like I don't want to do anything very spoilery, but there was a time I was waiting for the narrator to jump into the story. So I was waiting
Yeah,
for at some point for the narrator to say, and that was me, and this character was me, or
yeah,
and I don't want to say if it happens or doesn't happen, but I was waiting for it the whole book. Like once the character of the narrator begins to develop a little bit,
yeah.
I was waiting for that moment.
That would have been cool.
Well, you said it would have been. That's a spoiler right there.
We just said we
I'm
never
trying
find
to
out who it
avoid a
is.
spoilering. I don't understand this.
But
This is
but yeah, I really did enjoy that aspect of it as well.
yeah.
So let's see.
Next video, fantasy football.
I did definitely not on my channel. So I had on my list too how I compared to Fairy Tale. So that was another question I wanted to ask you. And then I also, something that I thought was cool, not really a question, but I don't know if you remember, but or if you noticed, how he did this for his daughter. Her name
Uh-huh.
is Naomi,
Mhm.
and that is a character in the book.
I didn't make that connection.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool that he wrote this for his daughter, and then there's a character by the
Yeah,
name
yeah.
of Naomi.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't make that connection at all.
Yeah. So I
Mhm.
thought that was kind of cool.
I mean, that's cool, right? Like, kudos to Stephen King. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, kudos to him regardless, right? Um so yeah, and that is pretty much all the questions that I had set up for our little discussion
Yeah, how'd I
on
do?
this. I'm sure they'll let you know how you did. But is there anything else that you want to let them know about the Eyes of the Dragon, or anything else?
um, I might be a little bit negative, but overall, I really enjoyed it. Like, I think that there's definitely a place for this book. Like, there's people who are really gonna love this book. Like, that
Yeah.
person's not me, but there are people who are really gonna love it. I thought it was
I
very
really
good.
liked it. I think I'm one of those. And yeah, I agree. Maybe we were expecting a little more. He's getting bored on me. And I have to agree. Like, maybe I did expect a little more adventure, like he says, and stuff like that. Because I have read some other things with him, maybe one or two things, and they've been very like,
Like,
the battle is starting, and
correct.
then like these epic like adventure things.
Yeah, like to go on a sidebar real quick. Like we read that Dragons of Autumn Twilight, right? That
Yes,
Dragonlance novel, and
that
that
was kind of a buddy read,
yeah, that
actually.
was kind of a buddy read. That's true.
Yeah,
But
that was years back. We
that
read that.
that's like really high fantasy, right?
Yeah,
And the difference between that and this is stark. Like the
yeah,
contrast between that and this is a whole nother genre of book,
yeah.
right? The only thing is they have dragons in them is the only thing.
But yeah, this was for us a pretty good read, a pretty solid read. I
Yeah.
highly recommend it. To all the Stephen King fans out there, let us know, have you read this one? Is this one that you haven't gotten to yet? It is an older work. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I picked this as our buddy read, and now he needs to let you know and me know what our next buddy read is, because it's his turn to pick our next book. Have you decided what that's going to be?
This is a continuing thing.
What do you mean? We agreed to at least two of them.
I know, I'm just messing with you. I want to do something by Neil Gaiman.
Okay, I
So
like Neil Gaiman.
so maybe Good Omens or Norse mythology.
I don't think I have Norse mythology.
You have to have it. I'm sure it's in here somewhere.
I don't think I have it.
But
But I do have
but
the
one of those
Omens
two.
one. Dark
Good Omens.
Good
Good
Omens.
Omens. That's probably what I'd want to read next. I hear it's like dark and Neil Gaimanish, but also kind of fun. And then there's a show that I've been meaning to watch and we haven't because I want to read the novel.
Okay.
So I think I'll probably go for that one.
Yeah, that'll be your pick.
If I have to pick right now, then yes.
Well, you don't have to. I'm just, giving them a little preview.
Yeah, we can do Good Omens by Neil Gaiman.
So is that a good one? Do you guys know my reading taste? Do you think that's one that I'll kind of like? Do you think that's something that I will enjoy? Does that make for a good buddy read? Have you buddy read that? Let us know.
Have you buddy read that?
Just asking.
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments below. I don't know if you saw, but we're right in front of my Stephen King shelf. This is all my Stephen King goodies here. Actually, it runs a little bit that way too. I think the tail end of it is like right around
Storm of the Century.
Yeah.
And,
there goes Pikachu.
Pikachu took
well,
a dive.
I'm gonna go ahead and get ready to wrap this up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed our discussion of this book and our little buddy read. We definitely enjoyed it.
Yeah, we enjoyed it. I enjoyed the process.
So we enjoyed it, and we'd love to bring you more buddy reads in the future, maybe. So if you enjoyed this, let me know in the comments down below. He was kind of hesitant. He said people don't really want to watch us talk about this book, and I told him you did. So if
I said specifically people that wanted to watch me talk about this book. That's
so if you want to watch us do more buddy reads, let us know in the comments down below. This is only one of the buddy reads I have planned for this month and next month. So I have quite a few of these happening. And yeah, so thank you guys again so much for watching. Consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. And I will go ahead and talk to you in the next one. Bye, guys. Bye. To start us off, I'd like to ask my invited guests to give us a little summary of The Eyes of the Dragon by Stephen King.